You know what's really cool? Stargazing. Seriously, I love looking up at the sky and playing connect the dots. I remember so many times as a kid coming home from some kind of family function or an after-school activity and looking up to see Orion's belt in the sky. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, and I still think that to this day. Scientifically speaking, stars are fascinating, but you know what I think is even more incredible? Learning about what stories the ancient world wrote using the sky as inspiration. And I'm not just talking about the Greeks or the Babylonians. I want to learn about what all sorts of cultures thought about the sky. Today, we're learning about the stars and other cultures, and today's episode is all about my favorite set of sibling constellations, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. To start, I'll give you the one we're all familiar with, the Greek version, and then I'm going to follow it up with the Native American version, specifically from the Cree nation. The Greek story of Ursa Major begins, as so many do, with Zeus eyeing a pretty mortal woman. Aside from the obvious problem of her lacking consent, there's another problem for Zeus. She's a hunter of Artemis. The hunters of Artemis are warriors who pledge their services to Artemis's hunt. They gain immortality and eternal youth, all at the cost of eternal celibacy. Knowing this, Zeus decides, screw the rules, and he goes after Callisto. In one version of the story, he goes down and seduces her himself, but in another version, he transforms himself into Artemis and tricks Callisto in disguise. There is so much wrong with that, I can't even make a joke. Anyway, time passes and eventually Callisto gets pregnant because there wasn't any birth control in the ancient world. Artemis eventually notices the bulge in her belly and demands to know what happened. And can you imagine the look on her face when Callisto points at her and says, "You did this to me?" Oh, to be a fly on the wall during that conversation. Artemis is outraged at this accusation and transforms Callisto into a bear. She then chases her off into the woods with her hunters. Callisto manages to escape and eventually gives birth to her son, Arcas, who is still a human and not a bear cub. Eventually, Arcas and Callisto are found by regular hunters, and they're taken to King Lycaon to be kept and raised in his city. Eventually, Arcas grows up and becomes a functioning member of society. Callisto, on the other hand, does not have her curse reversed. She does eventually escape back into the wild, though. Probably a decade or two later, Arcas, now a hunter in his own right, spots a bear in the woods, and he prepares to shoot his bow. Zeus was watching, however, and it's a good thing he was, because at this point, he finally decides to intervene. The bear Arcas was going to shoot was his mother. Zeus intervenes, but he doesn't cure Callisto. He instead turns Arcas into a bear too. He then yanks both of them up towards the sky by their tails, turning them into constellations Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. This is why the Ursa constellation have long tails, is because Zeus extended their tails by yanking them upwards. There is also another version where Hera is the one who turns Callisto into a bear and tricks Artemis into shooting her, but it ends the same way with Zeus saving Callisto by yanking her into the sky to become a constellation. That's the Greek version of the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor myth. Now, onto the Cree nation's Ursa Major myth. A long time ago, Bear was the undisputed king of the animal kingdom. He used his imposing size and stature to get whatever he wanted and bully anyone who stood against him. The other animals were sick of this treatment, so they called a meeting to figure out what to do. All of the animals of the Great Plains gathered, and they realized that some past attempts had been made to curb Bear's influence, but no one succeeded. Nobody could even calm him down, as any opposition to him just made Bear angrier, and because of that, they decided they needed to kill Bear. Many animals were all still too afraid, and no one volunteered. Eventually, the birds were chosen because of their hunting abilities. And my personal headcanon is because it's also they can fly out of Bear's reach when he tries to fight back. But that's just my own interpretation with no valid footing in the story. 7 birds were chosen to kill Bear, and once they agreed, they began training. Another bird, not chosen to be one of the 7, Raven was one of the few animals that still liked Bear, because Raven would just follow behind Bear and eat any food Bear didn't want to eat. Raven was now worried they'd actually have to put effort into their meals, and so they went to warn Bear of this impending danger. Bear was outraged when he learned what the animals were planning to do, and he decided to take the fight to them. Bear eventually found the 7 birds training, and he tried to scare them into submission. The birds were not afraid of him though, and upon realizing that he couldn't scare them, Bear turned and ran for his life. the birds chased him down, and the chase went on for so long that they chased Bear into the sky, where it became the constellation Ursa Major, with the 7 birds represented by the Corona Borealis constellation. Please don't demonetize me. The hunt continued into the sky, where Bear suffered grievous injuries, so much so that he had to hide on Earth to recover. And we can actually see when Bear gets injured, because it's his blood that turns all the tree leaves various shades of red during autumn. Bear will rest during winter, and will eventually return to the sky in the spring, completing the cycle all over again. You can actually see this in real life, because Ursa Major does dip partially below the horizon during autumn. Many cultures around the Great Lakes and the Great Plains have a version of this story that's similar. The Iroquois, for example, have the same story, except instead of birds hunting Bear, they're hunters. And it's not the Corona Borealis constellation. It's actually the handle of the Big Dipper, the bear's tail. So that's the Ursa Major story according to the Cree Nation. But you're probably wondering, how does Ursa Minor connect to this? Where's the bear's cub? Well, the Cree Nation didn't see Ursa Minor as a bear. They have another completely unrelated story about Ursa Minor. Long ago, before humans had dogs, life was much more dangerous. Dogs act as a natural alarm to alert the humans of danger, so without them, people were attacked far more often. The wolves, coyotes, and foxes all saw this, and they felt sorry for the humans. Each species held a council to decide what they could do. The wolves decided to offer up 2 of their own pups to the humans, presumably a male and female, but the story doesn't say. The coyotes and foxes saw this and decided to copy the idea as well, offering up 2 of their own pups from each species. These pups were cared for by the humans, and over generations they became the dogs we know today. From these original 6 pups, all modern dogs descend from, and because of their importance, the original 6 were made into the constellation we know as Ursa Minor. There are 7 stars in total in the Ursa Minor constellation, 6 stars representing the original 6 pups that sired the dog species, and the final star, Polaris, acting as a peg for their leashes, because the star doesn't move. These dogs circle the night sky on patrol, keeping watch over humanity during the night. Well, that was a really nice story featuring an origin for man's best friend, and it's also a good example of how different cultures saw commonalities and differences while looking at the same stuff. While Ursa Minor was a bear cub to the Greeks, to the Cree it was the original 6 domesticated dogs. Ursa Major, on the other hand, was viewed as a bear getting hunted across the night sky, but not by all cultures. The Egyptians and Arabs saw Ursa Major as a coffin, and the Babylonians saw it as a wagon. Still though, the fact that the Greeks and several Native American nations saw the same thing is kinda weird, right? Well, here's the really crazy thing. And no, I'm not talking about ancient aliens. This story is a skeleton, which some folklorists refer to as the Cosmic Hunt. The Cosmic Hunt features a group of hunters chasing some kind of animal across the night sky. This story has been connected to Ursa Major through the Greeks, Romans, Cree, Iroquois, and even some nations across Siberia. The Siberian connection is also important because it offers some kind of possible theory of a link. There are some folklorists who argue the fact that this story is shared by people across both North America and Eurasia is evidence that this story is old enough to have been told during the time the Bering Strait was above water. If that were the case, this story would be over 15,000 years old, older than Mesopotamia, older than writing, older than frankly anything I have ever covered on this channel, and maybe ever will. It is crazy to me that this was already a story well known and dispersed across hundreds of cultures before mammoths even went extinct. This is a truly ancient story, and I think that's so freaking cool. Anyway, thank you for watching, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more. I have a Discord where I share memes and updates on future videos. I also have a Ko-fi where you can tip me if you think I should get paid for what I do. So until next time, have a happy new year.